Good evening. I'm not going to talk about user experience design. I'm going to talk a little bit about my move to New York. It's fire escapes all the way down, and I started a series called Coffee on Fire Escapes back in November when I first moved here. And one of the reasons why is that I wanted to capture, at some point, the essence of my morning ritual, which had become very important to me. I had lived really a hyper-mediated life where my entire existence was really projected out onto social networks. I spent so much of my time tweeting and thinking about the people that were tweeting back to me. And I thought about George Berkeley, who was a philosopher who first said, esse is percipi, to be is to be perceived. And I thought, actually, the opposite of that is what I'm living, which is to be perceived is to be. And so then I started wondering, what does it mean when all of our existence is actually echoed back to us, and we seem to be living this external life? And what is it when the social networks that we live upon actually are reflecting back to us and saying that we are in fact God? And I thought about, I am because my external profile exists. As I live out there in the world, it is projected back to me, and my interrelations and even my sense of myself is projected this way. And then I thought, if the social networks are the only thing that is actually reacting back to me, maybe the social networks themselves have become God. So what does that actually mean? I was thinking that Heidegger, he said that technology is not just the collection of all the artifacts that we have, but actually, Heidegger thought that technology actually inframes the way that we even perceive the world around us, and that our tools, and to some extent our practices, feed back upon us this way. And then I wondered, to what extent are we all, to some extent, becoming nodes in the social network, and that we are used and we are exploited, and to some extent everything becomes something to be friended or to be followed. And I wondered if we all are becoming these social objects, and that our meaning is derived from our relationships to the things that we produce and the people around us and how we comment on their blog posts, then maybe we all become disaggregated. We become remixed. We become redistributed. We become, in a sense, the very social objects that to some extent we abhor. And to some extent, I deconstruct, therefore I am. And this is my sense of myself. And this social networks that we belong to become, in some sense, the Jeremy Bentham idea of the panopticon. That is, instead of this prison that we are living inside of, it is the social networks themselves that kind of hold us in and act to surveil us. And we become, to some extent, the content farm. That is, a new form of dialectic emerges. It is not necessarily labor and capital anymore, but it is the creative engines, that is ourselves, and the content farmers out there. And to what extent are we enslaved by the Facebook advertisers of the world? And Borgman, Albert Borgman, had an interesting idea, which is, what if we focus on the most important things in our life? And maybe it's not so much that gadgets are things that are extensions of ourselves, like the Marshall McLuhan sense of the word, but maybe if we focus on the focal activities that are most important to us, then they will give us an antidote to this vapid hyperreality. And to some extent, I'm really talking about myself here. And so focal activities, really, they center our attention. And one of the examples that was just actually mentioned, ideas such as sex, food, our friends, and our family, and probably in that order, are the things that really allow us to center on the most important stuff in our life. And so what Coffee on Fire Escapes became was, in essence, a ritual, this idea of a communal sacrament, where I could really focus on what was most important in the morning. But to some extent, it was also very social. I allowed myself to take these really important pictures of my coffee on my fire escape, and then I was able to share them over Twitter, and they became a focal point where I could actually center myself before I went off and started the day. So this Coffee on Fire Escapes is my own personal ritual, and so the only thing I leave you with is, perhaps it's important so that we can escape from the everyday craziness of our hyperreality to focus on our own sacred rituals and to find some meaning that is inside of ourselves but is also shareable. Thank you very much.